What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining the Freedom Ticket again. I hope you've been able to listen to the first couple modules. But right now, I've got a special treat for you. I've got a special guest. This is one of the most brilliant entrepreneurs in the world. It's Colin Campbell. You might not have heard of him because most of the really smart people, they're not celebrities, necessarily like Elon Musk or Bill Gates or something. But there's a really large group of smart people that have just started out as entrepreneurs at a young age and just have been crushing it. And Colin is one of them. And in fact, one of the reasons, I talked about in the last module, how you want to actually start this business to be thinking about selling it and to be building an empire, not to just create a job. He actually wrote the book on this. This book right here, it's a pretty big, thick book, but it's easy reading. The type's not too small. But this book is one of the best-selling books out there. It just came out at the end of 2023. And they can't keep them in stock. I mean, all the big booksellers, all the airports, if you go and look at all the lists, it's like number one on every list. Business books, entrepreneur books, economics books, you name the list, it's number one. Colin put this together because he's been doing this since he was about knee-high to a grasshopper, and he's been through a lot of stuff. He's sold many, many companies, from the internet space. He's running the e-commerce space. His companies sell on Amazon. He's not an Amazon seller per se. He didn't start that way, but he uses it as a marketplace and as a channel. But this is one of the best entrepreneurs out there. So I wanted to bring him on just to talk about how you need to be actually getting in the right mindset and what it really takes to succeed as an entrepreneur as you're starting your journey selling on Amazon. So Colin, super stoked to have you here, man. Welcome to this special module.
Well, thank you for having me on. And quite frankly, there's been a lot of failures along the way, Kevin. It's not been perfect. It's been a roller coaster. And the early career I had the first three companies I started, we ended up closing or shutting down in the first 10 years of my career. And it wasn't until we began to figure out that every company that starts, scales, exits, and repeat, in every scenario, we need to look at the people, the story, the money, and the systems. And by the way, it changes between each stage. It's different in start than it is in scale. It's different in exit than it is in scale. And it's also different in repeat. And we sort of took that formula. We spent 10 years writing this book, over 200 interviews, of which about 50 are in the book. And it's really a compilation of stories that draw conclusions.
And you can get this book, and I recommend everybody go out, check it on Amazon, Amazon.com. Just type in his name or start, scale, exit, repeat. I recommend you actually buy this book to supplement you as it's not an Amazon-specific book. It's an entrepreneur, business mind, marketing type of book. So it's not going to tell you, here's how you launch a listing necessarily on Amazon, but it's going to give you that framework that's really important, that foundational knowledge, and to learn from someone that's been doing this. So Colin, what do you think it actually takes? You see a lot of people, you got people that work for you and they're like, I'm tired of working, getting a paycheck. I'm going to go start my own business. What do you see that it takes to be successful as an entrepreneur? What is it? Is it money? Is it mindset? Is it work ethic? Is it luck? What is it that do you feel, and we all, like you said, we're risk takers. We have failures. I've had failures too. What is it you think is fundamental that everybody listening needs to actually understand to be a successful entrepreneur? What do you got to have?
Well, really, I think it's all about understanding unique problems. My son once found a $20 bill on the ground, and he said, "Oh, I was lucky." And I said, "No, you were observant." Anyone out there who wants to start a business, because trust me, ideas are everywhere. We are in a very incredible time. There's a lot of paradigm shifts occurring, a lot of technology shifts, especially around AI. And there's a lot of opportunity if you're in an industry you love, if you're working at a job and you begin to see bottlenecks or issues in that industry, or how to apply AI into that company, believe it or not, there's other companies that you can help with the AI as well. So there's opportunities everywhere. It's just about being observant. It's about being aware of that $20 bill that's sitting there on the ground. And once you're aware, you begin to look around, and it's actually a little bit of a game. You can have a little bit of fun with this because you can begin to think, okay, this is a pretty cool idea. So the next step we're going to do Kevin, is we're going to go from this idea to acting on it. And sometimes the actions you take can be small, but there can be significant. Okay, so one of the first things I do is register a domain name. I'll look at the domain name. The other thing I do is I go to the trademark database. This is very important. Go to the trademark database and search for that name. Then I'll literally put a logo on it, and we'll build a business plan around it. In the book, I have a business plan you can build in 30 minutes. It's called the 4 Sticky Note Business Plan. And then we vet it. We don't vet it with the yaysayers or the naysayers. We don't want to show mom our concept because she's going to love it, right? So she'll say whatever. She's going to love it. What we want to do, though, is we want to vet it with peers. We want to vet it with others in our industry or others in our community that can help us take our idea and even make it better. That's why I often recommend that people join an incubator, and they're free. A lot of them are free around, the United States and Canada. You can join them. They don't cost you anything. And you can get a lot of good feedback, make connections, find out how to get government funding, also do pitch competitions. So that's it. So you got your idea. You're going to want to take that idea and act on that idea. Now, let me just share one quick story. Back in 2005, my friends and I, we were sitting in a dacha in Ukraine. And we had multiple companies we owned at the time, including one was an app development company called Brisk Mobile. We developed games and different types of apps for the mobile phone. And we were complaining about how hard it was to get a taxi when we traveled around the world. So we said, why don't we come up with this concept? We'll call it My Yellow Button. We even registered the domain name. And it would be this yellow button. You press this yellow button and you can see the car coming to pick you up at your location. Well, we went back to the United States. We didn't focus on it. They focused on some games or whatever it was, and the team. And it was a fairly large team of about 30, 40 programmers. No one focused on it. Well, 2 years later, 3 years later, you saw Uber and Lyft and, multi-billion-dollar companies. So don't be one of those entrepreneurs that sits back and has great ideas their whole life, but they never act on it. And then they say, oh, that was my idea.
People will start they're using Amazon in this case as their opportunity because they're looking for those $20 bills and those opportunities on Amazon, and they will not start. They're afraid to pull that trigger. They've got $5,000 or $10,000 or their life savings, or they borrowed some money from a rich uncle, and they're just afraid. So they bounce from course to course or from YouTube video to YouTube video, trying to learn, reading books. And you should read, books like this book. But once they've read this, they don't take action. They go find, oh, well, there's something I still don't know. I'm not sure yet. So there is an element of risk when it comes to being an entrepreneur, right? What is it? How do you make that shift from working for someone for a paycheck to basically taking all the risk on yourself? And how do you make that shift?
I think you can reduce that risk substantially. Believe it or not, 82% of startups fail because of cash. They don't have enough cash. So I say in the book, I often talk about this, is that there's a 4 sticky note business plan, and you really need to figure out your stage gate. That's a point in time where you have your MVP. You might have your first product that you can get onto Kickstarter, whatever it is. There's a certain point in time. And we want to make certain we have enough funding before we step forward. You can have the best concept in the world, the best people, even great systems, but if you don't have the right funding, or if you don't have enough funding to get to your first stage gate, then you're not going to make it. So I often say, let's lay it all out in a small business plan. Let's identify exactly what we need to do to get this business off the ground when it comes to people, when it comes to the KPIs, the key performance indicators, those metrics that we're going to want to track very closely. When it comes to, and when I say people too, I'm also referring to consultants, people outside. They don't necessarily need to be employees, but they're critical for the launch of your business as well. Could be your patent attorney. E-commerce is a great space. We love e-commerce. You can grow very quickly in e-commerce, but you need to think about how you're going to protect your e-commerce business as well. And patents is one of those. So you're going to want to think about your story, your people, the money, and the systems. 4 sticky notes. Each one, we have a title for each one in the book. And if you lay it all out, you can reduce a lot of stress on yourself, and you can push the naysayers aside as well. You say, look, I have given myself 6 months to deliver this product, prototype, whatever it is, or sell 100 products, or have my first delivery, test it, and actually get a ROAS, a return on ad spend of less than 30%. Whatever it is, whatever that point in time is, it's important to set that when you first set out. And when you do that, it reduces a lot of the stress. And I'm actually a big believer in moonlighting, by the way. I think if you have a job, you're working, they're paying you, that's great. You can do things on the side. But again, there is a formula for starting a business. There are a lot of things you want to consider. First of all, how scalable is it? Can you build a moat around it? And does it take advantage of a paradigm shift or technology shift? A shift like AI, for example. That's an important concept. Every one of the companies I've done has really been in a new space. It's taken off not because we were copycats. One of the key ingredients to succeeding is the story and what your story is. And in that story, if you have an X factor or you're different than your competition, that can be key. Back in 1979, there was a gentleman named Joe Foster. We interviewed him for the book. He started a company called Reebok. He was at $9 million in sales. One of his employees saw some ladies doing something called aerobics. They decided to design shoes that no other shoe company was designing. Okay? No other shoe company was going into the aerobics space. They decided to build shoes or design and manufacture shoes for aerobics. They launched that. Jane Fonda wore the shoes. The company went from $9 million in sales to $900 million 4 years later, all because they went into a space that Joe Foster calls the white space. So when you're talking about e-commerce, it's really important to think about how you can be unique and different. At paw.com, we pioneered the memory foam dog rug. We pioneered the entire category. We filed as many patents as we could, design patents, utility patents, all those things. Then we pioneered waterproof blankets for your they're really protectors for your furniture, your bed, your car, your couch, for going to the park if you want to be in the park with your dog. And then the next thing we did is we pioneered the memory foam car seat. We're the only company in the world that had a 2-seater memory foam car seat. And then we did a 3-seater as well. Look, we went into the white space. We tried to figure out how we could be unique and different. And then that company hit $39 million 3 years in a row on the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies in America. And it continues to deliver unique and different products. But we had to learn this lesson. Test and fail more. Scale winners quickly and kill losers fast. We made a lot of mistakes by not following that creed. Test and fail more. Scale winners quickly. Cut losers fast.
I think that's important. You're going to see here in the Freedom Ticket, we're going to be talking about some of what Colin just said. This is coming from the horse's mouth here. I mean, this is a guy that's been there and done that. And so have I. But you need to have enough money. We're going to have a whole module where we talk about how much money do you need. And maybe you need more than what you have. Then you got to change your sights. So if you're looking at a product opportunity and you're going to need, you do the math on it. I'll show you how to do this in later modules, and you need 20 grand. Maybe you don't have 20 grand. You only have 10 grand. So you have to change and look for another white space, another product that you can actually do for the 10 grand. And I'm going to go into all the details in one of the later modules of how to do that reverse math and how to narrow in. And we're going to show you with using Helium 10 and a bunch of the other tools exactly what Colin just talked about. This applies to all industries, but when it comes specifically to Amazon, how to find that white space, how to find where that demand is, and then come in and not be a Me Too product or not just copy somebody else and just change the logo or add a warranty card or have 2 units instead of 1 or something, but actually truly be innovative and differentiate your product. That's critical. That's critical. And to build that moat around you, like he said, these are all fundamental things, whether you're selling on Amazon, you're going to Kickstarter, you're starting in the next McDonald's, whatever it is. These are fundamental things that are super important. So once you've actually hit this and you've pulled that trigger and you've started and things are starting to rock and roll, what's the next thing before you can really start scaling this up quickly that you need to be cognizant of as an entrepreneur starting a new business, specifically e-com?
Yeah. Okay. So I don't care if it's e-com. I don't care what business it is, but the number one thing that holds 98% of companies in America fail to scale. The number one thing that holds them back is the entrepreneur themselves. They fail to get out of the way. The company's too driven by the personality of that entrepreneur. But by the way, is what helped you succeed in Start. So in Start, it's all about the entrepreneur and the intuition of the entrepreneur. And, you're connecting with your people and you're making things happen. But as you begin to move into scale, we need to learn how to delegate responsibilities and not just tasks. See, my wife and I, we own a school in Fort Lauderdale, and she runs the school. She does not follow by this creed. She does not. We have, 80 parents, 100 students, 17 teachers, but she runs the school and she delegates tasks. Almost every night she's up at 3:00 in the morning thinking about all of the challenges that she has to deal with because she hasn't delegated those. And really it's a shift in mindset. And the other thing that I would say, it's important to think about your business 10 times larger. I call it scaling in zeros, right? Adding a zero of profit, a zero of revenue. We want to scale to 10 times our size. In order to do that, we need to think like an organization that already is 10 times the size. And we need to hire the people with runway, the people who've done that, who've already been there, who've already been running the companies at that size or have taken a company from 100,000 to 1 million. And we need to begin to implement systems. See, entrepreneurs are often like cowboys, right? We're all sort of like doing our own thing. We're breaking the conventions. But the reality is there's a lot of systems that have been proven out there that you can follow that can help you scale your organization. And we're talking 2 days of strategic planning per quarter, 88 days of execution, weekly meetings, goal setting, daily sales huddles, sales playbook, profiling your employees and prospects, find the right people, take those people who are different than you, who are you need for other positions in your company, and profile them for that position. Profile yourself. When I say profile, I mean actually take a test. Go on the internet. You could do a DISC profile, DISC, and actually test yourself out. Figure out who you are, what your strengths are. I'm not good at sales. I'm really not. And so I hire other people who are good at sales, who can do that cold calling and who can handle rejection constantly. I can't handle rejection. It's just not something I can handle very well. But, and then I hire somebody who can do technology. And once you've identified the positions in your company, the profiles of those positions, then you can hire the right people, fill that in, and scale your company.
So at what point? So I'm the solo entrepreneur. I've got the idea. I've started, and I'm going. But I don't have a lot of money to to have this whole infrastructure. At what point do I need to start thinking about? I mean, you said start thinking about the zeros from day one. But what point do I need to I need to carve out a way to hire my first, if I'm doing e-commerce, my first customer service agent, or I need to hire my first inventory manager, and then stair step that up, which means probably I'm taking less money out of the company in the beginning because I'm going to reinvest to get this to go. So what do you advise on? How do you know when those magic points are, especially if you're coming from this from a not a huge budgetary point of view, when you start adding these layers of people to actually get out of your own way? And what do you recommend on that?
Yeah, one of my favorite chapters in the book is a chapter called Customer Funded Startup. Okay, this is using your customers' money to fund your startup, whether it's charging an annual fee, or even with your suppliers as well, going to your suppliers. In e-commerce, this is important. Try to develop a relationship with your supplier. So we're going to come up with unique ideas to figure out how we can start the business, how we can grow the business. Do we charge annual memberships? Do we charge a VIP membership that gives access to certain things that others would not get to help fund the company? It really is all about thinking through the different ways we can do this. The reality is you can start your business with not a lot of money. And I would really encourage you to consider joining a local incubator. Customer funded startup, I'm sort of like in between on the crowdfunding apps or services on the internet. I think it's a great way of getting your product out there, proving it. But I really encourage people who do go on those sites to patent their products first. There's a lot of copycats, and I've seen it happen where people will come out and they'll launch a product on these sites, and then others will copy them if they're popular. So I'd be careful with that.
Yeah, and 2 points. I just want to give you a couple examples of what he just talked about. One is on like Kickstarter. Like what he said, get the patent and get the IP protection on that before you actually showed up there. But there's 2015, there was something called a bunch of balloons. And this guy developed, when you do water balloon fights with the kids, you'd have to sit there and put the water balloon on the spot, on the faucet and fill them up one at a time, tie them off. Well, he developed some sort of thing that you attach and has like 20 different or 30 different rings coming off of it. And it'll fill 20 balloons all at once. And you hit one little thing and it ties them. It's like beautiful. And he did that on Kickstarter. It went well. Then he sold, went to Amazon, was crushing it on Amazon. Well, he didn't have the IP on it. So for a year, basically, while he was getting his ducks in a row to get his IP going, the infomercial people came in and started doing a similar product. And they called it, instead of a bunch of balloons, they called it a basket of balloons, or I don't know what the heck it was called, something different, and just blew it up. Now, he benefited a little bit because people would go to Amazon and they'd find his product. But for that 1 year, it's nothing he could do about it. But then and these infomercial people, they knew it. And we don't care. We'll take advantage of it. And if he tells us to stop, we'll either stop. If it makes sense, we'll work out a deal with him in the end once he gets the patent. And so that can happen. And then back on the customer funding, I did this with one of my companies. We needed to raise money. And I was like, how can I? And starting with lower money can actually be good. Like you said, the VC stuff, because you get crazy money, you don't know how to manage it. And you don't get innovative. You figure that, well, we just have the money, we'll pay for it. You don't have to be creative in what you're doing and watch everything as closely as you might. So when I started one of my companies years ago, we started a membership plan called the Gold Club. It was $99 a year. And we had a little membership card, like a little credit card company card. And we had Continental Plastic Card Company in Fort Lauderdale. I'd send them every week. Here's the names of the people that emboss, who had signed up, and they emboss it and send them out to them. And they got discounts on our product, like 10% discount. And they got some other special bonus things. And it did so well. I was like, we raised 40, 50 grand, sold 400 or 500 of these to our customers. I was like, this is a good idea. How can I do it again? So I came up with the Platinum Club. Okay, now you can upgrade to the $199 one. And then we had another level above that down the road. It would trickle off. So if there's 500 people in the gold, there might be 250 in the platinum, and then 100 in the diamond or whatever the next one was. But each one of those was basically a cash in advance fundraiser. And they got a discount on the products so that they're still buying products from them. Yeah, I'm giving them 10% off, but I got that money up front when I needed it with basically 0% interest, and nobody looked over my shoulder saying, how are you spending my money? Those are important things to be thinking about. Now, that's a little bit more difficult to do when you're selling on Amazon specifically, but there are creative ways. Like you said, with the suppliers, it might not be your first order, but if you can show a plan and of actions, like here's what our plan, let's work together as a partner. You may have to go to a different factory, but there are factories out there that if you can show that you look like you know what you're doing, they want to partner with you. They want that long-term effect. And if you can show that on paper, like here's the master plan, work with me on this. And you might only get, your terms might be, 30-70 on the first order, 30% down, 70% when it's ready to ship. But then the next order, you can put benchmarks. Say, if we hit this target, if we sell these first 1,000 in 2 months, will you agree that the next order we flip this, where I get, instead of 70%, I put 20% down, and I pay 30% when it's ready to ship, and you give me 50% on the flip side. 60 days later, and you can negotiate. All this is negotiating. These factories, they get terms from the Chinese government, so sometimes they don't even have to use their own money. So there's lots of ways to be innovative on doing it. So once you've done this, Colin, how you start to scale, and you're hiring the people, and you're ramping up. When is it that you start thinking about the exit, and what's the steps as you're scaling to actually start preparing for an exit where you're going to sell this business?
Well, it's interesting because, when I first started my businesses, I never even thought about exit, right? But the reality is now when I start a business, I think about the exit on day one, right? I make certain that we have a virtual drive in place, that all contracts are in place correctly. I try to identify who would be the company that would buy our company. Like, for instance, we actually did identify in 2012, we had a company called .club, which was an alternative to .com, .net, .org, .shop, right? And so we had a company called .club, and we said right away, you know what? We're going to build this company and sell to GoDaddy. 8 years later, we sold it to GoDaddy. I mean, it happens. And when you begin to think about selling your company, you're going to want to really think about three types of buyers. Okay, you've got cash flow buyers, you've got competitors, and you've got strategic buyers. Now, cash flow are going to pay you the EBITDA multiple. And unfortunately, right now, it's not a good time to be selling your e-commerce business. The EBITDA multiples are relatively low compared to where they were 2 years ago, 3 years ago. They were quite significant. But they're going to pay you strictly based on, take a company like paw.com. Okay. We have a set of products that we have. If we sell to a private equity or cash flow buyer, they're going to look at our earnings per share and say, we're going to give you 4, 5, 6 times your earnings per share, whatever it is. It's a great brand. It's a good company. So maybe we'll get a premium at 6 times. Okay. But if we sell to a competitor, we might be able to eliminate $1 million of expenses, which all of a sudden now gives you a lift on that EBITDA number. Now, they're not going to give you 100%, but they're going to give you somewhere in between. But then if we sell to a strategic buyer, like let's say a Petco or some bigger company like that, who could say, hey, we'll take their patents, we'll take their products, we'll sell them across our customer base, and we'll 10x their business. So I'm willing to give you a premium for your business. So begin to think about three types of buyers from the day you start your business.
And so when it comes to actually selling, what are some of the pitfalls that people are not prepared for? They, like you said, they don't have the documents, the document database. They have to scramble to find this document from some graphic artist they hired 4 years ago on Fiverr that says that it's a work for hire, or have to go back, track them down, or whatever. What are some of the things that you see are common that when people go to sell that they're not ready for, that kind of shocks them?
Okay, it goes back to the story, people, money, and systems. Okay, at each stage it's different. Now, an exit, the story, we're going to want to make it sound sexy. Okay, we really want to step that up when we're selling it. The people, again, here's where the entrepreneur gets in the way. The type A personality, the rah, 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 look what I've done. But the reality is they need to step back. They need to promote their people, and they need to demote themselves. Because the reality is most entrepreneurs that sell a company are not with that company 3 years later. And the buyers know that. Entrepreneurs are kooky. They're kooky by nature. Let's admit it, right? So they know that. And because of that, we're going to want to check our ego at the door. This is very, very important when we're considering selling a company. And then we also want to think about the right time to sell. In the book, I have a chapter saying timing is 50% of the value. Well, in e-commerce, that might be very conservative because 2 years ago, valuations were here and they came down probably more than 50%, probably down about 70, 80%. Companies like BarkBox went from 3.5 billion to 150 million. Allbirds, I don't know if you remember that company. It had a similar, got crushed similarly. Now, good news is we hit the bottom a year ago. or a year and a half ago, especially when container costs were like crazy from China. That was sort of the bottom. The market is starting to come up again. So this is a time to build your e-commerce business. We want to be in build mode. But 2, 3, 4 years from now, when the market's frothy, then we want to, what I call exit stage left. We want to look for signs of froth. Do you remember 2021 when you saw Bored Apes, $500,000 cartoons selling for $500,000? You
Some
saw
of them for
stock,
over $1 million. Some of them for over $1 million.
You saw a stock called GameStop violate any rules of economics. You saw SPAC after SPAC, special purpose acquisition companies launching on the stock market. You saw IPOs were like every week on the stock market. The market was hot. And when we begin to see that kind of market, that's when we want to exit. So timing is half the value.
And you always want to exit when you're on the way up, not when you've leveled off or are declining, ideally, right?
It's so freaking hard, though.
So how do you know?
So
It's
like
you know,
this
if I just
happened to
hold
us,
on
like-
if I just hold on another year, I can add another $20 million to my exit figure or to my bottom line. But do I hold on if something changes? What if there's another war, or the container prices go? You don't know if the COVID's gonna. That could have happened to people in 2019. They're holding out, and then the whole world goes to hell because of COVID, and things change. How do you? What's the gut feeling? I mean, you've done this a lot more than I have. When is that gut feeling? It's like, all right, I know we could make this better, but I just got to take some cards off the table. Well, how do you do that?
Again, in the book, I talk about look for the signs of froth in the market. But the one particular thing that you want to look at, if you really want to be scientific, is number of IPOs per year. All right, there are virtually no IPOs in 2022 and 2023. It just dried up. So if you want to look at one metric, you want to look at the number of IPOs. When you start seeing record IPOs, very hot stock market, it all scales down. It all comes down, by the way. So if the stock market and the e-commerce companies are doing well up here, the retail companies, then it's all going to come down. What was crazy is when the market collapsed or fell in 2021, the private equity and venture capital were still sort of paying higher valuations. So it does take about 6 months to adjust, but we want to look for signs of froth in the market, and probably the best way is to just look at the number of IPOs that are happening.
Interest rates might be another barometer to look at too, right?
Oh, interest rates have been devastating for startups. It's inflation, interest rates. It's been horrible. Our loans in some of our businesses have gone from 3% to 9%, and these are government-backed loans. 9%, you're almost like thinking, it's almost like, whatever. But then you look at other inventory loans like Shopify and some of these others, and you're in the high 30s. You really got to watch out. That's another thing about, we learned in e-commerce is when you get inventory loans, you really have to find the right company to back you on those loans, because some of the interest rates are, in my opinion, almost criminal, and you've got to watch out for that. And the companies are taking these high interest rate loans. Yeah, they might do okay, but then over time, it's just too much of a risk, and it's not something most companies should go down. So looking for alternative ways to finance the inventory other than these inventory loan companies, I think that's an important, it's something that's important in 2024, because that's, the high interest rates are definitely impacting our ability to fund these companies. But I'll tell you this, I've said a lot of negatives about the e-commerce business, okay? But let me say this, it's never been an easier time in history to launch an e-commerce business. Never. You have a platform like Shopify, which costs you almost nothing. It really is the standard. I don't think there's a way to go. You have Amazon, which costs you almost, it's not like you have to pay $50,000 to get onto Amazon. You just need to learn the skills of how to make Amazon work for you. You need to learn how to use Shopify to make that work for you. We now have AI, so you can become an expert in your industry. I wrote an article yesterday. We have a new product coming out, and I wrote an article, and I said, so I just personalized it a little bit, prompted it, talking about my dog, Ginger, We went shopping, ways to take your dog give me 7 ways to take your dogs shopping and the things I should know as a consumer. Frickin' done in 30 seconds on ChatGPT. We can become the expert in our space. We don't have to be the best writer in the world anymore. So we have ways of launching on Shopify and Amazon. It's just simply about learning these systems and applying these systems to deliver success.
It's about the fundamentals. It's about fundamentals and the psychology of buying, and the fundamentals of business really don't change. The tools change, the marketplaces may change, but the fundamentals is, if you can master that, and that's what we teach you in the Freedom Ticket, is how to master those fundamentals. We're not teaching you, these are the 20 steps to launch your product on Amazon. A lot of people, you can go to YouTube and find someone says, step 1, do this, step 2, do this. Here's the formula. That's not what we're going to teach you. We're going to teach you how basic fundamentals so you can carve this path based on what you see the opportunities and based on what your goals are. And that's where we want to leave you. So once you scale this up and you've exited, the next step is just like my friends David and Leah that I've talked about here in the course. They've done it like 4 times. They've started, they've built it, they scaled it, they've exited, and then they've repeated it in a different category. So how do you, some guys, they hit that magic number and they're like, okay, I'm going to retire now. But what I always see is that somebody that's, say at 35 or 40 years old, they have a $5 million exit and they're like, all right, I'm done. And then for a year, they play around, they travel, they goof around, make some investments, and then they get bored. And they're like, all right, what I got to do something. So they're back in the game doing something, maybe the same kind of thing and maybe something else. So what is it when you repeat, what is it that you've learned from these first 3 steps that you got to take with you to repeat it and to give your chance to just leverage up and to scale up and to have some fun and do this again and maybe even make more money?
Yeah, and in the book, we break it down again into story, people, money, and systems. And that changes in repeat, right? I talk a lot about you become a brand as an entrepreneur. Everyone's a brand, everyone. If someone's going to invest in your business, then you have to be a brand. And that means you have to own the front page of Google. When Forbes, when I first started talking with them and they published the book, they said, you've got to change your name, Colin. I said, what are you talking about? Your name's Colin Campbell. There's thousands of Colin Campbells out there. You're not going to be on the front page of Google. So I changed the name to Colin C. Campbell. All right. So we want to think, how are we going to brand ourselves, be on the front page of Google? How are we going to get a Wikipedia up on us personally? What are we going to do to ensure that we have the right messaging? Because everything you do, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a Clubhouse talk, or whether it's, it's all being captured. And everything's about image. And we're going to want to portray a particular image so that we can raise money from other sources. We don't want to be using all of our own sources. We want to start, scale, exit, take some money off the table, repeat. So we're going to want to use other people's money when we get to repeat. We have the experience. We've done it before. And there are a lot of benefits of using other people's money. Sometimes it can actually expand your network of advisors. When we launched our last company in 2012, or one of the companies, we raised $7 million, and I did it from 37 LinkedIn contacts and closed 26 investments. Now, a lot of that, again, is reputation. So we really, really want to value our reputation, and how we act and behave when we sold our last company is important going forward as well. If we have a good reputation, people will continue to follow us and they'll continue to invest in our companies. Today, I run about 20 companies. I'm involved in 20 companies. I'm principal shareholder of 10 of those companies. And it's not all my money funding these companies. We have, in every company, no company I'm CEO in. In every company, we have a CEO. But in all those companies, I've brought investors into those companies to help us scale those businesses. And we have a number of e-commerce companies. We have a dog products company, I told you, paw.com. We also have a eyeglass company called Hip Optical. sort of a Warby Parker, but a little bit more edgier. All right. That kind of stuff. There's a cat company in our incubator as well called Meowingtons. Cute little company, whatever. But we do love the e-commerce space because it's a way of growing very quickly. But again, the key is just got to be different. And you have to solve a problem. When you're first setting out to do your business, we have to identify a problem or a challenge or a bottleneck in a particular industry. And when we identify that, then we can build products for it, go into the white space, test it, and I mean test it to your existing customers. Test it through your Facebook advertising, your Amazon advertising. Once we've got a product that we can hit below a certain ROAS, return on ad spend, then scale to infinity. That's what we call it.
So in closing here, I think if you could give everybody listening three things of advice of either the three best advices that you've ever gotten in business or three things that you've learned that you want to give advice to others to, like, these are the three core things, like, if I can leave you with anything, I want to leave you with these thoughts.
All right. For me, it's hire people with runway. Jack Welch, he's the one who said that, who's former at General Electric, former CEO. Hire people with runway. In the book, I've tried to take it down to a formula of, okay, if they're at this level, hire them. If you're at 100,000, hire people who've gone to 1 million. If you're at 1 million, hire people who've gone to 10 million. So that's one. Two, I will say, learn how to delegate responsibilities and not tasks. Look, the reality is most entrepreneurs, you're good at what you do. We all know that. Your dominant personalities make it so that you can get done. But the reality is, it's holding you back. Nothing's better than when you have others who are pushing forward and you have to pull them back. It takes too much effort to push people forward. The last thing I will say is start, scale, exit, take some money off the table. Repeat, you are an entrepreneur. Your identity is not based on your company. You're not the CEO of this company. You're an entrepreneur and your trade is entrepreneurship. And we need to learn how to master that trade. And then we'll become very successful so that we can start, scale, exit, repeat over and over again.
Colin, I really want to thank you for your time here. This has been really great. Hopefully everybody listening, you've gotten a little bit of motivation, some ideas off of this. This is someone that's done it, and it applies to whether you're doing an Amazon business or if you decide not to do Amazon after taking the course and to go in a different direction. I think the lessons that Colin has imparted here are invaluable. If you want to learn more and go into detail, make sure you go on Amazon and grab this book. It will, like you said, it's a collection of a whole bunch of interviews and stories from his own personal business and others. There's a lot of valuable lessons here. I think it'll help you as well. Looking forward to seeing you in the next module. Thanks again, and we'll talk to everybody soon. Thanks, Colin.
Sounds good. Thank you.